What do you see, young one?
The stars, they're so bright.
They guide us if we listen.
Before I tell you this story, I need you to understand something. Every village has secrets. Every family has a wound. And some wounds, they don't heal. They fester. They grow. Until one day, they swallow everything whole. This is that kind of story. Listen closely. There was once a village that sat at the edge of a forest so old, the elders said the trees remembered the first sunrise. They called it 𝒂𝒂💏, the forest of dark palms. And no one entered that forest after nightfall. Not even the bravest hunters, not even the chief's most fearless warriors. Because something lived in that forest. Something that watched. In this village lived a man named 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏, a farmer, a good man, a quiet man. He had 2 sons, and these 2 sons could not have been more different if the gods themselves had designed them to be opposites. The first one was Emeka. Tall, proud, blessed with a face that made women stop walking and forget where they were going. Emeka was charming. Emeka was bold. Emeka always knew what he wanted, and he always found a way to take it. The second son was Kelechi. Shorter, quieter, the kind of man people looked past in a crowded room. He worked harder than anyone, spoke less than most, and carried a patience in his chest like a river that never ran dry. The village loved Emeka. The village forgot Kelechi. But the gods were watching both of them. One Harmattan morning, 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏 fell ill. Not the ordinary kind of sickness that comes and goes with hot pepper soup and rest. This was the kind of illness that comes when a man's time is being called. His skin turned pale like dry clay. His breathing became the sound of wind through cracked walls. He called his sons to his bedside. His voice was barely a whisper. Emeka, Kelechi, come closer. They came. I have little to leave you, he said. The farm, the house, and one other thing. He reached beneath his sleeping mat and pulled out a calabash. Not a large one, not decorated with gold or precious stones, just a simple dark calabash sealed at the top with dried red clay. This, he said, belonged to my grandfather and his grandfather before him. It has been in our blood longer than any of us can remember. Emeka's eyes narrowed. Kelechi leaned forward. What is inside it? Emeka asked. 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏 looked at his firstborn for a long moment. That, he said slowly, depends entirely on who opens it. Before either brother could ask another question, 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏 closed his eyes, and 3 days later, he was gone. The funeral was long. The grief was real, but grief, as you may know, has a way of cuddling into something uglier when there is inheritance involved. By the 7th day, the arguments had already started. As the firstborn, Emeka said, the calabash belongs to me. Father did not say that, Kelechi replied quietly. Father did not say it belongs to you either. He said it depended on who opens it. That means it must be tested. It must be shared. Emeka laughed. Not a warm laugh, the kind of laugh that is meant to shrink you. Shared? You want to share everything, don't you, Kelechi? The farm shared. The house shared, now the calabash. Tell me, brother, is there anything in this world you would fight for? Or will you just stand there and let life hand you whatever scraps fall from the table? Kelechi said nothing. He simply looked at his brother. And that look, that quiet, unreadable look, unsettled Emeka more than any argument could have. That night, Emeka waited until the compound was silent and the moon had hidden behind thick clouds. He crept into the room where their father's belongings were kept. He found the calabash. He broke a red clay seal with his thumbnail. He opened it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air in the room changed. It became heavy, dense, like the moment before a storm breaks. A smell rose from the calabash, not foul, not sweet, something older than both, like deep earth and ancient rain, and something else, something Emeka had no word for. And then a voice came from inside the calabash. Not loud, not frightening, just present, like it had always been there, waiting. You have opened what was not yet yours to open. Emeka stumbled backward. Who are you? He whispered. I am what your father left you. I am what your grandfather buried and your great-grandfather found. I am the calabash, and now that you have opened me, I must give you what you came for. What I came for? Emeka swallowed. What do you mean? Every man who opens this calabash receives what lives deepest in his heart. Not what he wishes for, not what he prays for, what lives deepest. The thing he would never say aloud, the thing that drives him even when he tells himself otherwise. Emeka's mouth went dry. Because deep in his heart, deeper than ambition, deeper than pride, what Emeka wanted most was to be seen, to be more, to be untouchable. Then give me power, give me wealth, give me everything. The calabash was silent for a moment. As you wish. And the room went dark. By morning, something had changed. Emeka woke and felt it immediately. A warmth in his chest like a coal that would never go cold. He stepped outside and the world seemed different, sharper, more alive. The colors of the compound more vivid, the sounds of the waking village more clear. Within a week, it started. A trader passing through offered Emeka 3 times the normal price for a small piece of land. Emeka had barely lifted a finger, the man had come to him. The money that came from that sale led to another deal and another, and within 3 months, Emeka was the wealthiest young man in the village. People began to talk. Have you seen Chibuike's firstborn? Something has changed in him. They say he touched a deal last market day and it turned to gold before the sun set. They say the chief himself invited him to sit at his table. Emeka built a new house bigger than anything the village had seen. He took a wife, the most beautiful woman in 3 villages. He wore cloth that men only dreamed about. He had everything. But at night, when the house was quiet and his beautiful wife was asleep beside him, he would lie awake and he would feel it. A hollowness, a gnawed, shapeless hunger that no amount of wealth or praise could fill. He told himself it was ambition. He told himself it would pass. It did not pass. Meanwhile, Kelechi continued to work the remaining land. He woke before sunrise.
He worked until his hands bled. He sold what he could at the market and came home tired and quiet. He had noticed the calabash was missing from their father's room. He said nothing about it. He simply waited. Because Kelechi had learned something a long time ago. A lesson his mother had whispered to him when he was just a small boy clinging to her wrapper. She had said, "Some things ripen in their own time, my son, and the fruit that is forced open before it is ready rots before it can be tasted." Kelechi did not know what was coming, but he had learned to trust the waiting. 6 months after Emeka opened the calabash, the cracks began to show.
First, it was small things. A deal fell through. A partner disappeared with a sum of money Emeka had trusted him with. Then, the harvest from the land he had kept was poor, worse than any harvest in living memory. His workers began to complain, then to leave. Then his wife. She came to him one night with eyes that were quiet and decided. "Emeka," she said, "there is something wrong with this house. I have felt it since the day I came here. A coldness beneath the warmth, a shadow beneath the light. I cannot name it, but I cannot stay inside it." And she left. Emeka laughed at first, told himself she was foolish, told himself things would recover, but they did not recover. And then, one night, the voice came back. He had not touched the calabash since that first night. He had hidden it beneath the floor of his bedroom, beneath a loose plank of wood. But that night, he heard it, calling. Not loudly, not urgently, just present, patient. He dug it out. He sat with it in his hands in the darkness. "The wealth is leaving," he said. "Why is it leaving?" "I gave you what you asked for." "Then why is it going away?" "Because what I gave you was not yours to keep. It was borrowed. A gift taken before its time always carries a debt. The more that came to you, the more that must now return." Emeka's hands shook. "How do I stop it?" Silence. "How do I stop it?" he demanded. "You cannot stop what is already in motion, but there is one thing that can balance the debt." "What? Tell me." "Give the calabash to your brother. Give it freely, with no conditions, no tricks, no resentment. Let it go as a man lets go of water, with open hands." Emeka sat there for a very long time. The fire in the corner burned low, and something moved through him, something that looked like humility, but had the sharp edges of pride refusing to fully surrender. He closed the calabash. He did not go to his brother, not that night. What happened next, no one in the village saw coming. Emeka, in desperation, did what no one was supposed to do. He went into Igbo Oji, the forest of dark palms. After nightfall, he had heard stories, everyone had, of men who went into that forest seeking power. Some came back changed, some came back broken, some did not come back at all. But Emeka was desperate, and desperate men do not think about stories. He carried the calabash under his arm. He carried a small lantern, and he walked into the darkness between those ancient trees. The forest swallowed him immediately. The sounds of the village disappeared. The lantern seemed to push back less darkness than it should have. The trees around him were enormous, older than anything he had ever stood beside. Their roots rose from the ground like the fingers of buried giants. He walked for what felt like an hour. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Not behind him, not beside him, above him. He looked up, and in the branches of the trees, shapes moved. Not birds, not monkeys, just shapes, watching. Emeka forced himself to keep walking. Then The lantern went out. Complete darkness. He stood still, his breathing loud in his own ears, his heart slamming against his ribs. And then, from somewhere ahead of him in the darkness, a light, soft, reddish, like embers. He moved toward it. It led him into a clearing, and in the center of that clearing sat a figure, an old woman, impossibly old, wrapped in cloth the color of midnight, tending a small fire. She did not look up when he entered the clearing. I wondered which brother would come, she said. 𝒂𝒂𝒏 froze. You know who I am? I know who your father was. I know who your grandfather was. And I know what is in that calabash you are carrying like a stolen child. Can you help me? She finally looked up. Her eyes were the color of old wood, deep, still, ancient. Sit down. He sat. The calabash was made in this forest by your ancestor 7 generations ago. He was a man who had lost everything, his family, his land, his name. He came into this forest the same way you came tonight, desperate, afraid, and he made a bargain. What kind of bargain? He gave something of himself, something real, something permanent, and in exchange, the forest put a portion of its power into that calabash, enough to change a life, but not for free, never for free. What did he give? His firstborn son's pride. The words landed on 𝒂𝒂𝒏 like stones. What does that mean? It means that the calabash was never meant for the firstborn. Your ancestor gave away the firstborn's claim, sealed it into the bargain. The calabash can only truly work for the second son, for the humble one, for the one who does not demand, but receives. Your father knew this, she said. He knew that if the firstborn opened it before time, there would be consequences. He hoped, perhaps foolishly, that you would be different, that you would choose differently. 𝒂𝒂𝒏 said nothing, because somewhere inside him, beneath the pride, beneath the anger, he already knew she was right. He had always known. 𝒂𝒂𝒏 walked out of 𝒂𝒏𝒔𝒏 just before dawn. He did not know how he found his way out. The forest seemed to release him. The path appeared where there had been none. The trees thinned, and then the familiar red earth of the village path was beneath his feet. He went straight to Kelechi's house. He knocked. Kelechi opened the door. He looked at his brother, at the hollowed-out eyes, the fine cloth now dusty and creased, the calabash clutched in both hands, and he said nothing. He simply stepped aside and let him in. They sat across from each other in the small room. 𝒂𝒂𝒏 opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I took it, he said finally. The night father died. I took it, and I opened it, and I asked it for wealth and power, and it gave me everything I asked for, and then it took it all back. Kelechi nodded slowly. I know. 𝒂𝒂𝒏 looked up sharply. You knew? I suspected. The calabash was gone, and then you changed, and then everything around you changed. I waited for you to come to me. Why didn't you say anything? Because it wasn't my time yet, and because you needed to find your own way to this moment. 𝒂𝒂𝒏 stared at Kelechi, and for the first time in his life, the pride that had always lived in his chest like a clenched fist, slowly, painfully, began to open. He picked up the calabash. He held it out to Kelechi. It belongs to you, he said. It always did. I am sorry it took me this long to see it. The room was very quiet. And then, without any ceremony, without any drama, Kelechi reached out and took it. The moment his hands closed around the calabash, the air shifted.
Not because he had power, but because his counsel was always right. The chief called him. Then, neighboring chiefs called him. He grew wealthy, but slowly and steadily, the way a tree grows, not like a fire that blazes and burns and leaves ash, like a tree that deepens its roots with every year. He married, he had children, he built a home, and in that home there was a warmth that visitors always noticed, a sense of rightness, of things being in their proper place. He never showed off the calabash. He kept it on a shelf in his room. And sometimes when his decision was too heavy and the night was too quiet, he would hold it and the clarity would come. And Emeka remained in the village. He lost the grand house. He went back to the original family land and rebuilt from scratch. It was humbling. It was painful. There were mornings he could barely rise from bed. But something had also been released in him that night in Igboji. That clenched fist of pride, it had opened. He became a different kind of man. Not as gifted as Kelechi, but honest, present, hard-working, in a way that was no longer about proving something, but simply about living. He and Kelechi became in their later years what brothers should always have been: close, honest. The wound between them healed. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but healed. When Kelechi grew old and felt his time approaching, he called his own children to his bedside. He reached beneath his sleeping mat. He pulled out the calabash. His children leaned forward. "What is inside it?" the youngest asked. Kelechi looked at them all, one by one, with eyes that had seen through decades of truth. "That," he said softly, "depends entirely on who opens it." He placed it back beneath the mat. "When the time comes, you will know. The right one of you will know." And with that, he closed his eyes, and the calabash waited, as it always had, as it always would.